What if the man who invented one of the most important machines in human history died completely forgotten, while the company that built a billion-dollar empire on his idea put someone else's name on every single tractor they ever made? In 1892, in a tiny village in northeastern Iowa, a grain elevator operator built the world's first practical gasoline-powered tractor in his own workshop. He proved it worked by using it to thresh 72,000 bushels of grain in a single season across the open plains of South Dakota. Then he started a company, watched it fail, walked away, and spent the rest of his life working other jobs, while the machine he invented quietly changed the entire world. The company he left behind was eventually bought by John Deere for $2.5 million. Today, John Deere is one of the most recognized brands on the planet. The man who started it all died in 1933 with almost nobody knowing his name. That man was John Froelich. And this is his real story. Hit subscribe and tap the bell right now, because this channel tells the true stories that history left behind. John Froelich was born on November 24, 1849, in the small hamlet of Giard in Clayton County, Iowa. His parents, Henry Froelich and Catherine Gutheil, had emigrated from Germany, Henry from the state of Hesse, arriving in the United States in 1845. From the beginning, John was surrounded by farmland, hard work, and the constant challenge of moving crops across the wide, flat plains. As a young man, John Froelich oversaw the operation of a grain elevator, managing the storage and movement of grain for the farmers in his area. But he also ran a threshing business, hiring out his crew and machinery to help farmers process their harvests each season. This meant traveling across Iowa and into the Dakotas every fall, hauling heavy equipment across roads that were little more than muddy tracks. The machine at the center of this work was a steam-powered threshing engine, and it was a constant source of problems. Steam engines of the 1880s were massive, heavy, and required enormous amounts of coal or wood to keep the boiler running. One spark from the boiler on a windy day could set the whole prairie afire. A single moment of carelessness could burn down an entire harvest. John Froelich had been watching all of this for years. He was not the kind of man who accepted a problem as permanent. He believed that the steam engine had fundamental limitations. What farming needed was a completely different kind of engine. The specific moment that pushed him was practical. Failing to obtain coal for his steam engine, he was forced to think seriously about alternatives. Without coal, his entire operation stopped. The business model depended on a fuel supply that was unreliable and expensive. Gasoline was becoming more available. Small gasoline engines were being used for stationary purposes, but nobody had built one for a tractor. In 1892, Froelich and his blacksmith Will Mann developed a vertical, one-cylinder engine mounted on the running gear of a steam traction engine. The gearing that connected engine to wheels and allowed the machine to travel both forward and backward was Froelich's own design. What made this tractor different was that critical word, backward. That single capability is what separated his tractor from everything before it. Building the tractor in a workshop was one thing. Proving it could actually work in real conditions across an entire harvest season was something else entirely. A few weeks after completing the machine, Froelich and his crew started for the broad fields of South Dakota with the tractor and a new JI case threshing machine. That fall, they used 26 gallons of gasoline and threshed 72,000 bushels of small grain. To put that number in perspective, a man working by hand with a flail, the traditional method, could thresh roughly 7 bushels of wheat in a full working day. Froelich's gasoline tractor was driving a threshing machine that processed nearly 1,400 bushels every single day. The machine ran through heat that reached over 100 degrees Fahrenheit and cold that dropped below zero. It ran in wet conditions and dry. It ran day after day for the entire harvest season, without the catastrophic failures that had plagued steam engines. There was no fire risk to the surrounding grain. There was no need to haul coal across the prairie. When gasoline ran low, it could be sourced far more easily than coal in the agricultural regions of South Dakota. By the time Froelich brought his tractor back to Iowa at the end of the 1892 harvest season, he had something that no one else in the world had. Proof that a gasoline-powered tractor could actually do real farm work at scale. This wasn't a laboratory experiment. or a demonstration on flat, dry ground. This was a full commercial harvest season in real conditions, with real grain and real numbers to show for it. The success of the 1892 harvest season convinced John Froelich that the time had come to turn his invention into a business. Steam engines were hard to maneuver and threatened to set fire to grain in the fields. Froelich secured the backing of investors and founded the Waterloo Gasoline Traction Engine Company at Waterloo, Iowa on January 10, 1893 for $50,000. Froelich became the president of this new company, and the plan was straightforward. Manufacture the Froelich tractor in quantity and sell it to the thousands of farmers across the Midwest, who were struggling with exactly the same coal and steam problems that had driven Froelich to build his invention in the first place. The market seemed obvious. The need was real. The machine had been proven in the field. But what worked in the hands of its inventor did not work in the hands of customers. They built 4 prototype tractors and sold 2, though both were soon returned. The machines that Froelich had built with his own hands, adjusting and correcting as he went, were difficult for other people to operate and maintain. The technology was new enough that buyers didn't know how to handle problems when they arose. Small mechanical issues that Froelich could fix in minutes became insurmountable obstacles for farmers who had no experience with gasoline engines. Although Froelich is generally credited with assembling the first gasoline-powered tractor in 1892, his invention possessed several failings. It was unwieldy and did not have enough horsepower to drag a plow. The machine excelled at powering a threshing machine through a belt drive, but the fundamental job of actually pulling a plow through soil was beyond its capability. For most farmers, a tractor that couldn't plow was only half a solution. To make money, the company branched out into stationary engines, its first one powering a printing press at the Waterloo Courier newspaper. This was a practical decision that kept the company alive financially, but it was not what Froelich had built the company to do. He had founded a tractor company, not a stationary engine company. The direction the business was taking was moving away from everything he cared about. In 1895, just 2 years after founding the company that bore his name and his invention, John Froelich resigned. He relocated his wife and 4 kids to Dubuque, Iowa, where he worked for several engine manufacturing companies. This is the moment in the story that is hardest to fully explain from the outside. Froelich had built something genuinely revolutionary. He had proven it worked. He had started a company around it. And then, when that company struggled and shifted its focus away from tractors, he simply left. He didn't fight for control. He didn't find new investors and try again. He walked away from his own invention and went to work for someone else. What happened next at the Waterloo Company, the company Froelich had left behind, is almost painful to read in hindsight. Between 1896 and 1914, it sold just 20 tractors in all. The technology that Froelich had pioneered sat nearly dormant for almost 20 years, while the rest of the company focused on stationary engines. The gasoline tractor market that Froelich had seen so clearly in 1892 had to wait for the technology and the market to catch up with his vision. Meanwhile, John Froelich moved on with his life. He developed a new type of clothes washing machine he named the Froelich Neo-Style Washer, which brought him considerable financial prosperity. The man who invented the gasoline tractor spent a significant part of his later career in the washing machine business, comfortable enough but a very long distance from the agricultural revolution he had started. While John Froelich was building washing machines, the company he had walked away from was slowly, painfully working its way back toward the tractor business he had always believed in. In 1914, the company introduced its first Waterloo Boy Model R single-speed tractor, which sold very well, 118 in 1914 alone. The next year, its 2-speed Model N was even more successful. The tractor market that had seemed premature in 1893 was now fully real by 1914. Driven by rising farm prices, labor shortages, and 2 decades of gradual improvement in gasoline engine technology that made tractors more reliable and more capable than anything Froelich's original 1892 machine had been. The success of the Waterloo Boy attracted exactly the kind of attention that a profitable, growing tractor company attracts. In 1918, Deere & Company acquired the Waterloo firm for $2.35 million, integrating the Waterloo Boy designs into its lineup and evolving them into the iconic John Deere Model D by 1924. $2.5 million. For the company that John Froelich had founded with $50,000 and then walked away from. The men who stayed, who kept working on stationary engines through the lean years, who eventually developed the Waterloo Boy into a commercially successful product, received the benefit of that sale. John Froelich received nothing. He had already left. In 1918, Deere bought the Waterloo Company for over $2 million, and they made improvements to the design. By 1921, the Waterloo Boy was top dog. The facility in Waterloo, Iowa, that John Froelich's company had started grew into one of the largest tractor manufacturing plants in the world. Every John Deere tractor that has ever been built traces its direct lineage back to the company Froelich founded, and the invention he proved in a South Dakota wheat field in 1892. John Froelich died in St. Paul in 1933 in relative obscurity. He was 83 years old. He had lived long enough to see the gasoline tractor transform American agriculture completely. By the time he died, tractors were everywhere on American farms, and the companies that manufactured them were among the most successful industrial businesses in the country. None of them carried his name. The small town of Froelich commemorated the invention of the tractor in 1939, 6 years after his death, finally acknowledging the man who had put their town's name in agricultural history. A monument was erected. A museum was eventually built. The village officially became known as Tractortown, USA. Today, a full-scale replica of the original Froelich tractor is on display at the John Deere Museum in Waterloo, Iowa. The company that grew from the company Froelich founded now sells tractors in over 100 countries and generates revenues measured in the tens of billions of dollars annually. The story of John Froelich is a reminder that the person who invents something and the people who profit from it are not always the same. He saw the future of farming clearly in 1892, proved it was possible with 72,000 bushels of South Dakota wheat, and then watched from a distance as the world he had imagined came true without him. The tractors are everywhere now. The name on them is John Deere. The man who started it all died in Minnesota with almost nobody knowing his story.